Hey everybody, it's Soger. I'm here with Comrade Kaine. We're going to be talking about city build order and your best opening moves for the
The
ancient era.
best opening moves. Like the
Yes, the
moves, the
best.
only moves that you can have in your game are right here.
Well, I don't know if they're the only moves. Well, it's the initial moves that you said that you should be taking, I guess is what we should say. Um,
Based on your gameplay. All right.
yes.
So what are we talking about here? We're talking about literally the first moves. You start with a settler and a warrior, right?
Yes.
You settle your city, you figure out where to settle. Now you have your warrior. And see, the thing is, like for the beginners, usually you would say, "Oh, keep your warrior close because barbarians, because
Yes.
whatever threats." Right now, watching Soger, guys, you probably figured or saw him just wondering that warrior it becomes a scout, basically.
Yes.
And to me, that's an advanced type of play because you're feeling comfortable that you can defend your capital or whatever your current empire without that extra unit.
Well, the most important thing to know, and this is one of the most important things that I think new players, I wouldn't say struggle with, but I don't think they take this into account. Barbarians can't capture your capital. If you don't have districts, there's nothing to pillage, and if you don't improve tiles, there's nothing to pillage.
But
So for like the first 20 turns, the only negative that can really happen is barbarians can just be hitting your city.
right, and grow out of control though. That
Yes,
will prevent you from doing anything else. So
correct.
in any which case, they cannot take your capital. That's great to know. However, you do need to manage the situation.
Well, yeah. If a barbarian camp spawns next to your city, I would change the pathing of my warrior to go take care of that if it makes sense. You have to take multiple things into account. You have to take into account like what separates you from the barbarian camp. If it's just I don't know 5 tiles, then that might be your problem. If it's 10 tiles, but there's a city state right
Hmm.
next to it or another civilization
Hmm.
right next to it,
Hmm.
they might deal with the barbarian camp. They might not. There's
Hmm.
lots of things to factor in. Is there mountains? Is there a river? Is there stuff you can use to your advantage that you don't need to bring your warrior back to it?
Okay, several things, and notice that you are only talking about barbarians. You're not talking about bots yet. The AI.
Correct.
Why is that?
Because the AI does not factor in your warrior's location to attacking you. It doesn't care.
No, I
Your
understand that. So
Yeah.
you're saying that the players have the fear. Fear is the
Yeah.
mind killer. And
Yeah.
so I want to keep my warrior here because I don't know what the AI is going to do, but you do. You, as Soger, you know exactly what the AI is going to do, so you can
Well, and
manage
and
that.
the more important thing to think of is if you're playing on deity, what's one warrior going to do against 6? It's not going to do anything. That like if we're being honest, if you
Mhm.
get full on attacked by a
Yep.
deity AI,
Yep.
that one warrior is going to die just
Hmm.
like 0 warriors is going to die, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So, keeping it there only limits your number of options to dealing with that situation. If you send that warrior out, you can run into a commercial city state or a science city state that can improve your position by getting you to archery or getting you money for units sooner. It can meet you another civilization to trade with. It can,
All the
so
scouts benefits, basically. Absolutely.
exactly. It
Absolutely.
has all the scout benefits from turn 1. And that's
Exactly.
why scouts are so valuable. And
Well,
whenever
and
people
that's why that's a perfect segue to move
Yeah.
in into build order number one, right? What do you
Yeah.
build? Usually
I would
and
say
generally.
99% of games I build scout first.
Right.
The only caveats to scout first is if you're playing a water heavy map, if you're playing
Hmm.
like an archipelago or something like that, or if you're playing a game map size below standard, then the map just isn't really big enough. I would be more inclined to do a slinger. But if you're playing like a larger map, you should always be doing scout first. Like there's no debate. Unless you're like Inca. And I only say that because their terrace farm is so strong. But that's such a one-off situation where you just
Okay.
have a perfect city. But that's how specific the situation needs to be to not build scout first.
Right. I mean, and because other choices that you have from the get go would be a slinger,
Yep.
right? And what is your opinion on the slinger instead of a scout?
The slinger is less useful because it has less movement. It
Of
has better
course.
attack. Like I prefer slingers over warriors in the ancient era because you can attack without taking damage. So if you're defending a city, if you're across a river, if you can get a defensive position,
Mhm.
you do better. So I prefer slingers over warriors, but I don't need a military unit. I wanna explore. I want to find the map because, like I said, everything you find increases your ability to make decisions that directly impact your game.
Okay. So you would never build a warrior as a
I would
first
never
pick.
build a warrior first build. That is the worst. That is the worst first build. I would need if even if a civilization spawned on the start screen and I had nowhere to go, I would build slinger over warrior. Like there's
Yeah, for
no
defense. Yeah. Yeah.
I
No, I
can't
agree.
think
I
yeah.
agree. And
I
and it's
honestly
funny
cannot
because
think of a situation where I'd go warrior first.
and we're talking deity level, right?
Yes.
But what if we considered a lower level? Like, for example, beginners start, let's say, on Prince, for example, where city states have no walls, AI does not have extra units. That's a completely different ball game, in my opinion. I mean, scouting is still top
Scouting's
priority,
still gonna win. I'd still build scout first because
right?
on lower difficulties, exploring is harder because instead of a civilization having 3 cities by turn 15, that civilization has 1 city, and the AI is terrible at scouting. The AI is terrible at moving their units in a efficient manner. So scouting is even harder on the lower difficulties. Um,
Huh.
so if you're trying like if you're thinking about the map is the exact same size, but the people you are playing against are taking up a smaller footprint, you have to cover more tiles. So I would say on lower difficulties, I would almost, and this is if you're trying to win as fast as possible. If you're just trying to meet your golden age, I would go 1 scout. But if you're trying to perform at your best on lower difficulties, you almost have to go 2 scouts because you have to cover so much more of the map to find all of your rivals and everything, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Would you ever start with a monument?
Never.
Never.
I love culture. I think culture is the most important yield in the game. If you have 20 culture per turn in the ancient era, I'm still gonna be focusing on more culture. I'm not starting with a monument. Culture is important, but knowing the map is much more important.
Okay.
Um,
Let me ask you this though. If
yes,
you settle in an area that allows your city to grow fast, would you
yes.
start with a settler?
Once you have the scout finished, yeah, I've built. I think
So that's a second build. What
Yeah,
I'm
that
talking
that is
about is
definitely a
first
second
build.
build.
Okay.
Yeah, if we're talking very first build, it should be a scout. Now, um, the caveats to that would be, like I said, smaller map, or if you're Nubia, you build a slinger. If you're a water-based map, you build a slinger or a builder, depending on your needs. Uh, but when you get to your second build, that is where there's a lot more variety.
Okay. Let's move on to the second build because
Yeah.
so the goals that we're trying to achieve in the ancient era, like you mentioned multiple times, is to explore,
Yep.
right? But also expand, right? So you,
Yes.
you want to settle as many cities as you can, technically,
Correct.
generally.
Yes. Your goal
And
should be 3 cities.
three
Which
cities, right?
which is
By
on deity, you should be aiming for 3 cities, which for a lot of people, that's gonna be really, really hard.
right, and
You
there is a way to achieve that because you are consistent in
Yes,
getting 3 cities at least in the
yes.
ancient era.
But what I'm saying is, if you're just starting out, if you're just starting to look into strengthening your game, your goal should be 3 cities. Anything less than 3 cities, you should be trying to figure out what you did wrong.
Right, right, and those type of things that you have to do to get those two settlers to
Yeah,
settle those cities. If you watch Soger's gameplays, again, every ancient area is turn by turn. You can learn a ton just by
yeah,
watching his gameplays. So let's talk about build order number two. What is
yes.
the next thing we want to build after the scout? So let's talk about settler. Would you build a settler right away?
That is going to be based on a couple of factors.
Hmm.
Number one is I don't know if city growth is the correct way to say it, but growth plus production. How long is that settler going to take? Because you have one city. If that settler is going to take 20 turns, it's probably the wrong thing. But if you are going to have 3 more population in the next 10 turns, that's going to come way down. You shouldn't be building anything that's taking more than like 10, 15 turns, like actual turns. Like when you click on it, it might say 16, but remember your city is going to grow. That's going to come
Hmm.
down. You're going to
Hmm.
get policy cards. You're going to do all that stuff. And that's another thing. I think people have a hard time gauging that 2 population versus 3 population is a huge jump. That's why when you settle your second city, it takes like 40 turns for your first district. It's not because it's a bad city, but you're literally doubling your production with your or your second population. You're adding 30% more production with your third population. So it's much more of an art than a science, is you have to sort of be able to look at what are you going to grow into and how is that going to affect the turn count of that settler. If you're spending 15, 16 actual in-game turns on it, that is far too long to tie up your only city.
Okay. So you're tying the decision whether to build a settler or not, let's say generally with the city growth, right? Like how
Yes.
fast can you? Okay. What about a second choice of starting with a double scout? So a second scout.
I would say double scout is probably if you are learning, if you are looking to, if this is like your first foray into trying to get your sub 200, if you're trying to, okay, I want to do really good at deity, or like if like this is you're learning this, double scout is the opening you should be doing. It is the consistently most successful for getting your deity golden ages. It's going to be you're you're going to have a lot more wiggle room on poor scouting and poor decision making with your units because you'll have 2 of them to travel around.
Hmm.
You don't have to pay near as much
Hmm.
attention to, like, when I meet a civilization, I'm looking at who they know,
Hmm.
I'm looking at terrain, I'm looking at what city states have been discovered before me, who has envoys at what city states to decide where I'm scouting. If you're not factoring in all these things and you have 2 scouts, you're going to do pretty good. If you have 1 scout and you're not factoring in, hey, this civilization has met 2 people I haven't, maybe I need to go that way, you're going to struggle at getting those golden ages and finding your rivals a lot more. So I am a huge fan, even though I don't do it as much anymore, of the double scout, because it's the no fail start. Like if you fail with double start on getting your golden age, you just had a really hard map.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
like
And that probably could be one of the decisions, right? To build a second scout or not,
yes.
if your exploration is slow, right?
Yep.
For
A
some
lot of
reason.
times, if the terrain is really
Hmm.
bad,
Hmm.
like if you spawn and it's all like hills and forest, where every tile's like a 3 movement tile, or you're in a lot of rivers, or there's just a ton of mountains, I'll do double scout because you have no sight lines, no nothing.
Hmm.
So a lot of times it's based on how my scouting is going, and the hard part with that is you have like between 4 and 8 turns of warrior movement to decide because your first scout is taken in the absolute best case scenario like 4 turns, and the worst case scenario 10 turns. So that's how many turns you have to make that decision, and that's where I say it's more of an art than a science. You just sort of have to have a feel for the game.
And that comes with experience. What
Yep.
about a builder? Would you consider building a builder as your second decision?
That is heavily influenced by
Settling
surrounding
location.
tiles.
Mhm,
Yep.
mhm,
If you didn't have a holy site location, or you had three animal husbandry or mining resources really close by,
mhm,
I could see making the argument for a builder. I think builder second is one of the weaker options
mhm,
because it's so easy to get 200 gold to buy one. It's
mhm.
so easy.
Okay.
It's so much easier to buy a builder than build it. But if you have that guaranteed payoff and it's not going out of your way, and that's like if you have like a couple of animal husbandry
Right.
resources, but you also have a +5 holy site, it's actually going out of your way to research animal husbandry. So
Mhm.
you get you get
Yeah,
what I'm
your
saying?
decision should be geared towards a decent holy site rather than
Yeah,
okay,
because that
got it.
holy site is gonna A, get you era score,
Mhm.
B, it's gonna start earning you
Faith.
faith for
Mhm.
monumentality and stuff like that. It's gonna unlock state workforce Eureka. And this is why and this is another reason why Double Scout is so strong. Tribal villages and Eurekas are based off exploration. There's a lot of Eurekas that you get from just exploring. There's a lot of stuff that you can get the science boost because you found a stone tile to improve for masonry. So these decisions aren't just, oh, I'm building my second scout because I should build a second scout. No, I'm building a second scout because it's going to help me get science. It's going to help me get culture. It's going to help me move my game forward in every aspect. Every decision should be intertwined like that. So if you're going builder second, it should be because your tech path has made it that builder second is the right call.
Mhm. What about a monument?